What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. Some Premier League stuff to get to, some quick thoughts on Lionel Messi's MLS regular season debut. But I want to start in Spain with the latest going on with the Spanish women's national team, the federation, and just everything that's happened in the past week and kind of the latest developments there. FIFA stepped in, suspended President Luis Rubiales. Investigation is ongoing. We'll see how that all turns out. But finally, something actually happened. And you also had this declaration from all 23 World Cup winners, plus dozens of other Spanish women's national team players, that they will not be playing for the Spanish women's national team until Rubiales is gone. And that's really kind of where I want to focus this, because this is still, a situation that we haven't reached a complete resolution, and going to have to see how things go in the next month, couple of months. But if you think back to immediately after that final whistle blew, and they had beaten England to win the World Cup, I have made it very clear in my reflections on the tournament, I don't agree with this framing. But if you are somebody in that federation who was going to bat for Jorge Vilda and believe that what the federation was doing was right, you can go look at the fact that you left all of those players at home, that you stuck with Vilda, and you won a World Cup as vindication that you made the right choice. Which makes it incredibly difficult for the players who were left out, that are asking not to be brought into the team because of their frustrations with Vilda, to have any kind of leverage. The federation, quote unquote, won that argument. And so I flipped it and said, well, if they got this far with all of these hurdles, imagine what these players in this program could do if the federation actually provided the support that it should. That's a different conversation, though. But in a week, you have gone from that, where the players had very little leverage, because this plan that had been created by the federation, that the federation had stuck to, even though the players did not agree with it, worked. They got a World Cup out of it. A week later, you have the entirety of the women's national team, not just Barcelona players, not just the World Cup squad, saying we are not playing until this gets resolved. There is no divisiveness between clubs in that awkward situation that you heard some about, with Real Madrid players not necessarily agreeing with Barcelona players in terms of the best way to approach all of this, and trying to just figure out what the best path forward is, and all the complexities with that in the World Cup. You don't have any of those questions anymore. Everybody is on the same page. And by the way, these are your World Cup champions. And so a situation where I would argue the players had very little leverage, through Rubiales' actions and the way that this week has played out, kind of backfired spectacularly on the federation, because now the players have all the leverage, because they are unified, because they are all on the same page, and because, quite frankly, the federation needs them more than they need the federation. They have clubs to play for. They won a World Cup. And, of course, you have the entire public support behind these players. And you saw over the weekend people having wristbands and shirts supporting Jenny Hermoso. The pressure is on the federation to get this resolved now. Everything is swung in the players' favor. And that's not something I feel like you could have ever really said throughout this process, where they have sacrificed so much to try and improve the program, to try and improve their immediate futures, to try and improve the women's game, the sport for the next generation of young Spanish female players coming up through the ranks. And that part of it had not really paid dividends yet. Yes, you won a World Cup, but I would argue that's something kind of different. They didn't win the World Cup the way they wanted to. They won it the way the Federation wanted to, and they were able to overcome that. But now you have all the leverage and all the power, and everybody is behind these players. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this all gets resolved. But that's really the point I wanted to harp on here is, it would also be really nice to see somebody within the Spanish soccer setup take some responsibility for their actions. But I've talked about that before. What I want to focus on here is kind of where we're at in terms of the leverage and the negotiations and what happens next. The players are pretty much holding all the cards now. And they're going to put pressure on the Federation to at least enact some change and get somebody else in charge. And how that goes with the FIFA investigation and all that, I don't exactly know. But a week ago, the players were not in this kind of position, even though they won the World Cup. There's a reason why the Federation and the social media channels, it was Vilda in. That was the message. We got this right. How can you say we were wrong when we just won with this guy? And now everybody, players, coaches, even Vilda, came and at least said something against Rubiales. It is all turned, and this is completely in the players' court now. Good for them for continuing to fight. Good for them for taking this drastic step. It's just incredibly unfortunate we came to this point, but here we are. A couple thoughts on the Premier League action this weekend. Your headline game and the way it also played out made it one of the games of the weekend. Newcastle and Liverpool. Trent Alexander-Arnold, another defensive mistake, leads to Anthony Gordon's goal. This is the mental hurdle I have with this Liverpool team. I keep trying to want to trick myself into thinking they're title contenders, and then things like this continue to happen. A few minutes after that, after Alexander-Arnold, maybe he could have had a second yellow card, then he lets the ball kind of roll past him. Anthony Gordon jumps on it for Newcastle's goal. Virgil van Dijk gets a red card. To me, that was a red. I don't think there's much of an argument. And now you're down a man, down a goal. And so enter Darwin Núñez. And Darwin Núñez gets two chances that are so similar to all of those chances last season that he put wide of the post. Right? Just usually went far post, and everything was inches, feet too wide. And he gets his two opportunities, and he finishes them both brilliantly. Is this a sign of improvement? I need to see more to believe that this is a new Darwin Núñez we're looking at here. But if that's the player that Liverpool are going to get the rest of the season, we're having a little bit different conversation at least. I still have a major issue with the defensive problems they've got. But Núñez is going to create havoc, and he's going to get himself in positions to score. The question is, can he actually put the ball in the back of the net consistently? The answer last season was no. And you saw all of these chances that it's not that they're golden opportunities that he should always take. It's the opportunities that the Mo Salahs of the world, the Erling Haalands of the world, the best attacking players do take more often than not. They're the ones that when you have a truly elite striker, the Harry Kanes, whoever, you see them in that opportunity and you go, I'm backing them to score, that's a goal. Not that they finish him every single time, but Núñez was the opposite of, you didn't have any confidence in his finishing ability. He just won a game more or less single-handedly for Liverpool, and playing down a man at that. The other part of this is big picture, how important that win was for Liverpool, and potentially for the Premier League title race. Think about this for a second. Had that game finished 1-1, the only teams within 2 points of Manchester City are Spurs, West Ham, and Arsenal. Arsenal dropped home points at home against Fulham. You're not really scared of Spurs or West Ham, even though they've had good starts to the season. The only team left with a perfect record is Manchester City. And I have said this over and over and over again, talking about the Bundesliga title race, talking about the Premier League title race. To me, the only way you're going to dethrone Manchester City or Bayern is if you get out to a lead, or at least you are right there within 3 points, putting pressure on them every single week. I don't see anybody coming from behind to catch one of these teams that are the heavy favorites. We're already in that position in the Premier League. Now, for Liverpool, for Arsenal, it's one draw, it's 2 points, it's not the end of the world. But what it does do, already being behind Manchester City at this point, as opposed to last season where City spent from this moment, 3 games in, until they caught Arsenal, chasing them. This was the Newcastle-Manchester City 3-3 draw, if you remember that game. This was the point where City fell behind Arsenal, and they didn't catch them until they overtook them and ultimately ran away with the title. It's the opposite right now. So, one draw, not the end of the world. But it makes the next month, month and a half, 2 months of the season absolutely vital. You can't fall 5, 6, 7, 8 points behind City. Do City get another 5 wins in a row? Or do we look up at the beginning of October and City have had a draw and a loss or something, and Arsenal have put together 5 straight wins, Liverpool are unbeaten in 7, 6 of those wins, something like that. Because we're kind of one step from getting to a point where we're going to have to start wondering if this is going to be an interesting title race. We're not there yet. But if this trend continues and Manchester City continue to build a lead, we're entering the danger zone just because you're already behind the 8 ball. Everybody. Because City is the only team that's 3 from 3. And wasn't the best performance in the world against Sheffield United. Haaland missed a penalty, but they ultimately get the goal they need to immediately after Sheffield United equalize. So to me, this is what I was thinking about this weekend, is both the Arsenal game and the Liverpool game. Because to me, those are the 2 teams that can possibly contend for this title. Can you just stay within striking distance? Can you keep it 1 game? Where if you're able to get a draw at the Etihad, or Manchester City can't come back from a late equalizer against, we'll just say, Bournemouth in a game similar to the Sheffield United one, something like that, where you just need one result to go your way and all of a sudden you're right there again. Or are we going to look up at the beginning of October and it's already Manchester City 5, 6 points ahead of everybody else? That's what I came away from this weekend thinking about. But Darwin Núñez getting both of those goals at least keeps Liverpool right there with Arsenal, only 2 points behind. And City didn't look spectacular, but 3 weeks in, instead of City chasing somebody else, we're already having everybody else chase Manchester City. Final thing, real quick, Lionel Messi came off the bench in his MLS regular season debut. Inter Miami got a win. Of course, he did his Lionel Messi thing when he got into the game. What you saw here, though, and Tata Martino has already talked about this, is going to be the plan moving forward. Inter Miami have made it clear they're going to go after the more achievable trophies. And to me, this is the smart thing to do. Instead of having to be almost perfect the rest of the regular season to get into the playoffs, to then have to win a bunch of road games, they're going to take this slow. If they get in, great. And, Busquets didn't start this game. Messi didn't start this game. They still found a way to win. It's entirely possible that they find a way to win these 2 or 3 games without him that they need to. And then they do get into the playoffs, and then who knows what happens. But he's not going to play 90 minutes every single game. Maybe this ends up looking different if they don't have the success in Leagues Cup that they did. But to me, this is the right call. You go get the most achievable trophies, the quote-unquote easiest ones to win. Because you had to play, I believe it was 5 knockout games in Leagues Cup, and it takes 6 from where they entered to win the Open Cup. They got to the semis without Messi. So prioritize those 2 tournaments. And whatever happens MLS regular season-wise, you just roll with it. If they don't make the playoffs, that's fine. This season has already been a tremendous success. And you feel really good going into next season no matter what happens. It's clear this is working. It just might not be enough if you don't have Messi every single game for 90 minutes to overcome this incredible hole that they have put themselves in. Because even with that win, they're still one of 2 teams in the Eastern Conference not averaging a point per game. There's still a tremendous amount of work to do to make the playoffs. Maybe they can pull it off. But I'm becoming less and less confident now that you see what this plan is. But to me, it's the smart plan. You got to sacrifice somewhere. So go sacrifice where your odds are the longest anyway. You got 1 trophy, go try and get the Open Cup, and then just do whatever you think is best regular season-wise for Messi. Whether that's him coming off the bench for some games, maybe just sitting one out entirely, we'll have to wait and see. But to me, it was clear. Miami had made it clear what their priority is, and to me, it's exactly the right thing to do. Start with a clean slate next season where you feel good about your ability to get, home field advantage, potentially win the Supporters' Shield without Messi playing every single game. You don't have that luxury this season. So instead of running him into the ground to try and get to the playoffs, to try and have an opportunity to win a bunch of road games. And by the way, road games in which, they haven't actually won very many of them. They've won a bunch of penalty shootouts. It's important to note that too. They haven't been some juggernaut on the road. Talking Leagues Cup and Open Cup in particular. Do the sensible thing. Go to the knockout tournaments where you're only a few wins away. Prioritize those. Prioritize your trophies. And just take everything else as it goes. Seems to be what Miami are doing. I'm fully on board with it. They do get a win, though, in Messi's MLS regular season debut. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.